First appearing in 1986, Pennywise has quickly become one of the most recognizable horror icons of all time. So today we're going to find out what really happened to IT. This is the complete history of Pennywise. In 1985, Stephen King was enjoying some free time at his home in Maine when his son said to him, "Hey Dad, let's go into town and get some balloons." King agreed, but warned his son that he didn't have any money. "Don't worry," said his son. "I already took care of it." Upon arriving at the balloon store, King realized that his son had stolen money from his wallet and bought several expensive novelty balloons. While being reprimanded by his father, one of the balloons popped, and King turned around just in time to see a spider crawl across the room and disappear into a crack in the wall. This strange event would serve as inspiration for one of the most iconic scenes in movie history. On September 6, 1985, Stephen King began writing what would become his 11th novel, IT. Much like King's previous novels, IT was going to be published under his usual name, Richard Bachman. However, King's publisher convinced him to release the book under his real name instead, believing that it would sell better. On June 1986, IT was released to international acclaim. The story follows a group of 7 children known as the Losers Club who must confront their deepest fears and fight against an evil entity that preys on the children of Derry, Maine. That entity, Pennywise the Dancing Clown, takes on many forms but usually appears as a friendly clown offering balloons to children. Despite its seemingly innocent appearance, Pennywise is actually a shape-shifting evil entity known as an IT that feeds on fear. Every 27 years, IT emerges from its slumber to terrorize the town of Derry before retreating back into the sewers to lay dormant once more. While the book was a huge success with critics and fans alike, there were some complaints about the novel's graphic violence and sexual themes. Due to this backlash, King would tone down the violence in future printings of the book. But there was one scene in particular that was often cut: the death of one of the main characters, Adrian Mellon. In the original version, Adrian is killed by Pennywise after discovering the identity of one of the Losers Club. To avoid negative attention, subsequent printings would remove Adrian's death entirely. However, the scene was restored in later editions. After the novel's release, rumors began circulating that IT would soon be adapted to film. While fans waited patiently for an IT movie, they were treated to a small screen adaptation. On May 1990, a 2-part television miniseries based on the novel aired on the USA Network. The miniseries starred Tim Curry as Pennywise and was well received by both fans and critics. The Losers Club was made up of Drew Barrymore, John Ritter, Harry Anderson, Richard Thomas, Dennis Christopher, and Adam Bataya. In the opening scene, Pennywise murders a young boy named Georgie Denbrough after he wandered off while playing with his paper boat. The Losers Club would soon discover the truth behind Pennywise's identity and set out to defeat the creature once and for all. While the miniseries stuck fairly closely to the source material, there were some differences. For example, the character of Ben Hanscom was significantly less overweight, and the character of Beverly Marsh was significantly less promiscuous. Also in the book, Pennywise is genderless, but in the miniseries, Curry identified the creature as male. When asked why he chose to ignore the ambiguity of the character, Curry replied, "Well, I just assumed that Pennywise was a he. There was a definite sexual aspect to the part. You know, he's a very virile phallic symbol. He's an ancient being, and I thought that he probably had a cock somewhere." As you might have expected, viewers found Curry's portrayal of Pennywise to be absolutely terrifying. In fact, the scene where Pennywise emerges from the sewer to retrieve Georgie's lost boat is still considered one of the scariest moments in movie history. Unfortunately, Curry would not be able to reprise his role as Pennywise for the film adaptation due to scheduling conflicts. In the years since the miniseries aired, it's become a Halloween classic, but some fans have criticized it for failing to capture the essence of Stephen King's novel. Others argue that the miniseries is actually superior to the film adaptations. While the debate continues, there's no denying that the miniseries helped to introduce a new generation of horror fans to one of literature's most iconic villains. With the success of the miniseries, it seemed as though the big screen adaptation would never come to fruition. After all, who could ever replace Tim Curry as Pennywise? Well, as it turns out, several actors were considered for the role. Names like Gary Oldman, Pierce Brosnan, John Lithgow, and even David Bowie were all thrown around. But ultimately, the role went to an actor you might have heard of, Bill Skarsgård. By the time 2017 rolled around, Skarsgård was already a household name thanks to his role as Hannibal Lecter on the series Hannibal. But landing the role of Pennywise would make him a horror icon for years to come. The casting of Skarsgård was met with mixed reactions. Some fans were excited to see a relatively unknown actor take on such an iconic role. Others weren't so sure. Could Skarsgård live up to the expectations of horror fans everywhere? To make matters worse, the casting came shortly after news broke that the new film would have a much darker tone than the 1990 miniseries. Many fans were disappointed to hear that the film would stray so far from the source material, but the cast and crew felt that it was necessary to capture the true essence of Stephen King's novel. And when the first trailer dropped, fans' fears were confirmed. The imagery was dark, disturbing, and unlike anything they'd ever seen from a clown before. The film was rated R, and the Losers Club was now a little older than they were in the book and the miniseries. The film grossed over $327 million worldwide. Critics praised the performances of the entire cast and crew, particularly Skarsgård's portrayal of Pennywise. He became the new face of the killer clown, and many agreed that he'd actually managed to surpass the performance of Tim Curry. A sequel, Chapter 2, was released in 2019 and was just as successful. But while the films may have been a success, they weren't without their problems. In fact, the production of Chapter 2 was plagued with behind-the-scenes drama. It was widely reported that the working relationship between director Andy Muschietti and author Stephen King had become strained due to creative differences. According to King, the biggest issue he had with the films was their excessive gore. "They just took everything to a much more graphic level than my story demanded," King told Rolling Stone. "I don't want the world to turn into a horror show, and I think that the filmmakers wanted to do that with Chapter 2. Muschietti admitted that he and King had clashed over the level of violence in the film, but claimed that their relationship had healed since the film's release. "I respect his opinion, but I don't agree," Muschietti told SFX magazine. "My intention isn't to put the audience through torture. It's just that sometimes things need to be shown visually to connect with the audience on an emotional level. With IT, we are dealing with childhood trauma, which is extremely painful. To deal with something that painful, you need to go through it. If you repress emotions, they manifest themselves in other ways." Since the release of Chapter 2, fans have been wondering if a third film might be on the way. Currently, there are no plans for an IT 3. However, Muschietti hasn't ruled it out in the future. In a tweet in response to a fan, Muschietti wrote, "Never say never." While the last few decades have been dominated by IT films, another adaptation is in the works. Set to be released in 2024, the musical will feature music by the legendary John Mellencamp. "Music is such an integral part of the storytelling," director Brandon Director told Variety, "and the songs in our production are a perfect complement to the vision we have for IT. Whether you prefer the 1990 miniseries or the 2017 reboot, there's no denying that Pennywise is one of the most iconic horror villains of all time. What do you think? Is Pennywise the most terrifying villain in horror history? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see another short just like this one, then check out the link above. Thank you for watching.